Hi everyone, I'm Kim Keever, FCSS Outcome Measures Trainer, and this video is to introduce you to the Excel data collection tools that we have created for the Voluntary Income Tax Program. If you have not watched the previous videos in regards to the registration page, I highly encourage you to do that now, as there's a portion at the bottom of it that will be required for you to fill in the data in this Excel spreadsheet. I will just remind you of what that looked like. So this is what was at the bottom. Hopefully, once we get to the Excel spreadsheet, this has been filled out. And I will just let you know that the way that this is organized is based on the way in which you enter the data onto the Excel spreadsheet. So the first column on the Excel spreadsheet is tax year. The last one that you're going to enter anything into is tax balance owing. So I did that hopefully so that it would be easier to enter the data. If you're choosing to make your own kind of tear off tab or something else, that's totally fine. You just want to make sure that you're collecting all of this information. And it might be easier if it is in this order. Okay, so when we get to the Excel spreadsheet, it's critical that you know that not to change it. So there's a couple things that you can change, but we really ask that you don't change it. And that is because at the end of the year, we'll be collecting these spreadsheets from everyone from around the province, and we will be compiling and aggregating that information. If you make changes to the spreadsheet, it's going to make it very difficult to include your data in the provincial total. So we're really hoping that you won't change it. Okay, so here is the spreadsheet. So a couple things to start off to show you is that, well, there's a lot of information on here. There's a lot of boxes, a lot of columns. In the light blue here, we have information for the month of January. If you scroll down in the purple, we have February. Some of you do taxes at any point in the year. Some of you really only do it February, March, and April. That's fine. If you do taxes in the month of January, you put them under January. And if you didn't, then you just leave it blank, and that's totally fine. We have formulas built into this spreadsheet to hopefully make things easier for everybody. So it is critical that we do things in a certain way to not change these formulas. We have totals for every individual as well as totals for every section. And I'll just quickly scroll down to the bottom to show you that we have totals for the whole year. So as I go through and show you how to use this, there's reasons why I'm telling you to do things a certain way, and that's so that we can get this bottom section to be accurate and to give us the best information possible. Okay, so when we look at our first column, we have tax year. So some folks come in with 3 years, some only come in with 1. So let's say they came in with 2, so you would write in 2016, 2017. Then we have, for these columns here, this is about the community of residence. What community does someone live in? So you might say this is Okotoks, High River, and Turner Valley, if that would be your situation. It might be that you go town and MD, if that's your situation. The key here is that you just put whatever makes sense. Some of you collect data for only one community. If that's the case, you can. This is the only place that you can delete anything. You can delete these 2 columns. If you're tracking for 5 communities as opposed to 3, you would just, again, highlight those 2 columns, right-click, and insert. So then you would have 5. And up here, you would just put whatever information that would make sense. When we look at tracking data for this piece, we want to identify which community they live in by putting a 1. The reason for that is that we have a formula to add up number of people from each community. So if we were to put an X, you would notice that it doesn't add up. So we need to mark off with a 1, whichever community they lived in that tax year. So if someone came in, and let's say this was the same person, they're filing 2016 and 2017, they lived in one community in one year, one community the next year, you would just identify which community for that particular year. Hopefully that makes sense. When we get over to this section, when we look at, again, we need to identify with a 1 whether they are a senior, age, low income, or resident. If they are a senior, we mark them off as a 1 and we leave the rest blank. If they are not a senior, but they are on AISH, we mark AISH off as 1 and we leave the rest blank. If they're not a senior and they're not on AISH, but they are living on a low income, we would mark that off as a 1 and leave the rest blank. If they're not a senior, they're not on AISH, they're not living on low income, but they're a resident of your community, we would just mark that as a 1. And again, the totals will come at the bottom. Come across over here, and now we are asking for the number of children. So we would just, however that might be, let's say there's 3. Then we have GIS, let's say it's 234. I have no idea how much is realistic. I'm just throwing in numbers. Let's say Alberta Seniors Benefit is 123. So as you can see, as we enter more numbers, more dollars, it's being totaled up over on the right-hand side. And so we would just add whatever the numbers are. When we get to the refund or owing, so if they get a refund, that means they're going to get $234. If they owe, that means they have to pay. So we're going to do a minus 234. So this is where we write in the refund or the owing. If they owe, that is where we do minus whatever they owe, so that it's taken off the total that they will get back. You can see that for the month of January, we've allotted for 20 spaces, 20 rows. For some of you, that would be a lot. For probably most of you, for January, that would be a lot. But let's say you need more. So one of the very critical pieces is that when we insert rows, which we can do, we just need to do it in a particular way. And that is so that this formula stays present in that particular row. So under every month, you will see insert additional rows above this row. So do not go below this. So you would go above it, and you would right click and you would copy. You're going to then right click again and you're going to say insert copied cells. And that way there's a new row and the formula stays present. Now, if you're wanting to track how many are processed this month and you're inserting rows, you're going to have to go over and renumber. I couldn't figure out on Excel how to make that just happen naturally. So you would have to go in and add that. So again, to insert a row, you're going to highlight that row. You're going to right click. You're going to copy it. You're then again going to right click and insert copied cells. That way our formula will stay there. So let's look at the month of March, which is often quite a busy month for volunteer tax programs. I have 46 spaces. For some of you, you're going to need 300-400 spaces. So for you to right-click, copy, right-click, insert copied cells another 400 times, it might drive you crazy. So what you can do is you can highlight however many rows you want. Then you would right-click and copy, and then you would right-click and insert copied cells. And all of the formulas will stay there and will be included in the totals at the bottom. So again, if you want to make this like, you just take everything you want, gonna right click, whoops, I don't know what I just did. That was an accident, sorry. Right click, copy, right click, insert copied cells. And now we've got like lots more. So you would just do that however many times that you need to. So again, it is critical that the only things that you change on this are potentially these columns and adding, inserting any rows by copying and then inserting the copied cells. That is the only way to ensure that we're able to get all of the, keep all the formulas in place, and then to be able to aggregate everything at the end of the year. I'm going to slide over just to show you as well. Some other information that we're tracking is number of volunteers for that month and number of volunteer hours, and then amount of FCSS dollars invested. So with that one, what we're encouraging folks to do, just to make it simple, is to think about how much time one typical or average return takes your staff to process in terms of receiving the information and giving it back. So some communities might think it takes 10, 15 minutes. So let's say it was 15 minutes, and in the month of January you did 4 returns. So then you would say that would be 1 hour of staff time. We then want you to take a look at the amount of hourly rate for that particular staff. So let's say that they are paid $20 an hour, then you would put in that month the FCSS dollars invested is $20. So the past year, a lot of folks did not do this piece, and it's because they were confused by it and they weren't kind of forgot about it. It is a fairly critical piece because it's the piece that allows us to say that for every $1 that FCSS invested in this program, we're able to bring in $394 back into our community, which is a pretty compelling story. So I do really encourage you to be tracking that information. We also have over here a legend that tells you what all this information, what all the abbreviations actually stand for. And if you are watching this video now and you're looking at this piece and you're asking where you get this information from, I again encourage you to go back and watch the previous videos about the registration form. A couple pieces I will show you at the end. We will be able to very quickly see the total number of turns, total number of children that were impacted through this program. This total is huge. It's going to be able to tell us how much money comes back into our community. And there is a formula for total number of volunteer hours, a formula for total FCSS dollars invested. However, there is no formula for the number of volunteers. And that's because we might have, say, I don't know, 2 volunteers in February. We might have 6 volunteers in March. So does that mean we had 8 different volunteers? Probably not. Probably 2 that were there in February continued to volunteer in March. So we cannot put in a formula. So we need you to identify, write in how many volunteers you actually had at the end of the year. So I'm just going to check my notes. I think that is it in regards to how to utilize this section. There is also a sample to let you see how it all can look. That's kind of small. I'll try to make that a bit bigger so you can actually see it. One of the really cool things is, whoops, sorry guys, is to see at the bottom. So for this, for a total of $790 invested, over $250,000 came back into the community. That's huge. So $250,000 for 124 returns. So that's a pretty compelling story to help tell our communities, to tell our councils, to help them understand why this program matters. And when we aggregate this information provincially, it's a pretty compelling story for the impact this one small investment has in terms of reducing poverty and leading to economic self-sufficiency for people in our communities. We also have a template that hopefully, if there's no changes for next year, then this would just be used next year. But I'm assuming we might have some feedback as we did this past year. So, but this is all available for you. So I hope that this was clear as it can be. The one thing I'll add just at the end is what a lot of folks did this past year is they tore off the bottom of the registration with the data, and they just put it into a file folder. And when they had time, they took 100 of them and just entered the data. You can enter it directly on here if you want your volunteers to be doing that. If they're comfortable with Excel, that's totally fine. However you want to do it is up to you. But the folks who utilized the tear off and then entered it later onto the Excel found that quite helpful last year. So hopefully it will be helpful for you. Feel free to re-watch this over and over. And again, if you have questions about this part or any part, please ask your outcome measures trainer. So the next video will be about a survey that we have for your volunteers, as well as the program summary report to aggregate the information from those volunteer surveys. Okay, thanks guys.